Thanks, Matt. Well, I guess I couldn't just, I have to run through my slides. So by way of introduction, I work at Kansas State University. I sort of similar job to Matt, and I got started with high tunnels a few years ago. So here's a picture of the high tunnels from an aerial photo that the tax people take. It's off the county website, and this is our experiment station. And we started out with a little PVC tunnel, called that the Home Depot model, and then we got 6 high tunnels and 6 open field plots, and we put in organic and conventional. We made them short so that we could replicate and do experiments. So we have these, and then we said, well, we've got a little bit's good, more's better, and that was probably a mistake. And then this is the picture. These are the hoops of the Haygrove High Tunnel, which we have on the side. So right now I'm sort of staggering around under the burden of dealing with all that. Anyway. And you don't need to be dogmatic about this, but people kind of like to say, what is a high tunnel? And so basically, I don't really have a definition. If I had to say it, I'd say it's kind of at the low end of the greenhouse spectrum. And so here's a picture of a fancy greenhouse, actually, but he's not heating it very well. And it's from Elliot Coleman's farm. So beautiful, winter production of leafy greens in the winter. And here's one from a guy down the road from me in Kansas, and he calls that the hoop house from hell. And I don't think he's really, but it works for him. And definitely that's not a high tunnel. Those are low tunnels being used efficiently in the California desert. And just some more, definitely this glass house in Holland is, not a high tunnel. And then they've got these little things with a rope holding on the plastic. And so maybe those are high tunnels. They're tunnels anyway. And here's like a rain shelter in El Salvador, and here's a little screen house in small low tunnels in Nicaragua, keeping the insects out. These are more kind of what we expect to see. This made by Zimmerman's in Versailles, Missouri. And this farm tech, sort of standalone type high tunnels. And so there's just an awful lot of variation and in end wall designs and everything. People can innovate around them. Here's a picture of our Haygrove High Tunnels. And the interesting thing is, I say these are not for the faint of heart. These are not for the person who doesn't know how to grow and doesn't have a labor force. So it's not for the mom and pop operation. And so here's my son helping me take the plastic off. Basically, these are a 3-season thing too. And you put the plastic on in the spring, and then you take it off in the fall. And so my children have grown to know and dislike my work. Something else that we kind of don't think about are these low tunnels, these kind of field houses. There are several farms. They're much less expensive, and people use these very successfully. There's somebody in Ohio, I think, Lucy Goodman, Boulder Belt Farm or something like that, and she's got, they're inexpensive. You put them up, you take them down. They're the Arnolds in New York. And then this was our first PVC one. PVC, right, if you can afford metal, it's probably better than PVC. PVC has several problems, but if you can't afford, if you just want to get off to a quick, inexpensive start, it can be extremely adequate. Here's a picture of a guy near St. Louis, and he's got his little portable hoop house. He puts the family, and they pick it up and move it around the field, and he's selling successfully to restaurants. And then there's people who be dogmatic about, it's a high tunnel, it doesn't have any electricity to it, but you find that people, one of the things that people can really benefit from sometimes is putting double layer poly on. The amount of extra insulation that you get from that and protection seems to be worthwhile. And roll up sides. I thought when I started out, I read what Otho said. Oh yeah, a high tunnel has to be 17, 18 feet wide. Any wider, and you get too much humidity. You got to have roll up sides and so on and so forth. And then you look around, and people have these 30-foot wide tunnels. They don't even have roll up sides. So and they're growing very successfully. So the first thing I became was less dogmatic. But anyway, this is just, if you do have roll-up sides, you need to keep them tied in, and this is used drip tape, and this is, I actually prefer a couple 2x4s, and they hold it in really nicely. You don't have to worry about but really, I mean, if you want to invest in something, roll down sides, probably a really nice idea, because you roll up sides, you get the wind across the crop, first thing. And the other thing is, if you can automate the sides, how much nicer would that be? Because, you have it on a solar panel or whatever, and then it's got a thermostat, and you don't have to run out and roll up and down the sides every morning and whenever the sun comes out. So that seems to be a logical innovation for an unheated greenhouse. And then people, Elliot Coleman, he started out with unheated greenhouses. Then he found out that in the winter, the plants grow twice as fast if you put a little heat in. And furthermore, it's more comfortable in the middle of the winter to be harvesting in, non-frozen conditions. And so he minimal heating is something that people do. So anyway, ways of holding the poly on. There's the wiggle wire is really quite fantastic, but if you don't use wiggle wire, then these furring strips, and it's a good idea to use 2 of them over and under rather than 1, because if you just put 1 on, then the screws tear the poly. End wall designs. This is my El Cheapo method, which is the single 2x4. And a farmer came to my experiment station and saw the swinging 2x4s and said, "Oh, that's a great idea." And he went out and put these on his 30-foot wide Atlas high tunnel. And that's a big 2x4. And I asked them how it was going, and they said, "Well, we framed in a regular end wall because that's a lot of poly to have wind blowing on." And they were ending up, so they wouldn't even open it, and they were crawling under the poly in the middle of the winter. And that wasn't a very good idea. They were an elderly couple. Another thing, and this is just, as was supposed to show a framed-in end wall, but another thing that people do is they move them back and forth. And so, this guy has, he can rotate and have cover crops. And so these are on little runners. There are various ways of moving things, moving tunnels. So that's about it for my introductory remarks.